Everything that is going to be said in this video is my own and personal opinion. This is also not a step-by-step guide, but a rather useful content that has some tips and tricks for absolute beginners who have decided to play Darkest Dungeon for the first time. You can either agree or disagree with what I'm about to show you. The choice is all yours. This video will not include 2 of the DLC dungeons, because in my opinion, as a beginner, you should not even bother yourself with them, especially at the early stages of the game. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yuri, also known as Terrorlord. This video is going to be the continuation of my ongoing series of Darkest Dungeons tips and tricks for absolute beginners. Once again, I am going to mention that this content is dedicated primarily towards beginners and absolute newbies who have just picked up Darkest Dungeon and want to give it a shot. Due to the tricky nature of this game, some RNG aspects, as well as a need to plan your moves correctly, a lot of players who like to rush things or play on autopilot will be devastated by the consequences of their actions. This is the reason why I am always going to tell you that in Darkest Dungeons, patience and knowledge is the key to success. Both of those things can be acquired and mastered. And in order to help you to do that, in this video I'm going to cover the last 2 Apprentice dungeons of the main campaign. Those 2 are Wilderness and Warrens. I will utilize the same cover pattern as I did in the previous video. Topics that we are going to be discussing today are Apprentice Weald and Warrens enemies, strength and weaknesses of monsters that you will meet there. With that thing in mind, let's jump straight into the main course, shall we? Weald and Warrens are the toughest and nastiest of the 4 main campaign dungeons. I'm not mentioning the Darkest Dungeon itself, because this dungeon is on a whole new level, and as a beginner you should not even look at it right now. Most of the problems in Weald are being caused by random diseases that you can get from rabid gnashers or fungal artillery, and sometimes being torn apart by fungal scratchers, who synergizes with the mark ability from fungal artillery that enables them to utilize their most damaging skill. Additionally, touching the interactable objects in this dungeon can lead to some very unpleasant results. However, Apprentice Weald is still not as bad as Apprentice Warrens, so you can relax a bit. Bestiary of Apprentice level Weald consists of ectoplasm, rabid gnasher, fungal scratcher, fungal artillery, as well as some random battle encounters that will have bandits, spiders, cultists in them. Considering the information given, you may start to guess what the Weald's foes are going to be weak against. If you guess that it was Bleed, you are correct. If you guess Blight, then it's a miss. However, outside of Bleed, you might also want to pay extra attention to the enemy race they belong to. It will make certain heroes better than the others. In Weald, foes are mostly beast, human, and eldritch types, so you won't lose anything if you will decide to bring someone who does more damage against those races. Now, let me mention some particular foes that you should be aware of. First one is going to be Rabid Gnasher. This enemy is fairly squishy, has only one single target attack at his disposal, and won't do much damage. But it has a chance to apply Bleed and Disease on hit. Bleed can be neglected, but nobody wants to have tons of diseases on their party members, especially when you just entered the dungeon or if you're approaching a boss fight. And you should also take into consideration that in the early game, disease removal is time and money consuming. But how do you avoid that problem? Well, there is no guaranteed way to get rid of this issue, but there are ways that can help you lower the odds of being diseased, such as swift disposal of the gnashers. They are very squishy, so some AoE or single target skill should do the job. Additionally, you can try to bring some disease-resist items, though I would advise against that. Remember that fights in the Apprentice dungeon should end as fast as possible, so that you won't have to cope with stress on your party members. The last thing that can help you is keeping that torch light at max, so that you will have a higher chance of surprising foes. The gnashers are weak to bleed as well as damage against beasts. Second enemy on the list is going to be fungal artillery. This particular foe always sits in the third and fourth position in the lineup, and mostly serves as an enabler of the most damaging ability of the fungal scratcher. For the most part, fungal artillery will utilize marking ability that won't do damage by itself, but will make scratchers' damaging potential much higher. But this is not the end of things, you know. Additionally, artillery will use their AoE blight attack that has a chance to apply a disease on hit. With all that stuff in mind, your target priority, at least in the apprentice level wield, should be fungal artillery, since they pose the most danger. This type of enemy is weak towards bleed, damage against human, and eldritch type. Last one is going to be fungal scratcher. Those foes are on the beefy side, that's for sure, especially when you take into consideration the fact that they have a decent percent of protection that allows them to negate a good amount of incoming damage from your raw damage attacks. By themselves, those mushroom people won't do much, but Darkest Dungeon is all about synergy, and scratchers are not an exception. Their best buddy is of course the already mentioned fungal artillery that provides them with an opportunity to use their random marked skill. And you have to take care of that ASAP. But how will you do that exactly? Well, you can do that in two ways. First, you kill the artillery so that it won't mark your target. Second, you get rid of the fungal scratcher or try to stun them to win an extra turn. Weakness-wise, they are not that different from fungal artillery, so you can use the same information mentioned in that foes section. In my opinion, those are the most important targets that you need to watch out for. Remember, study and practice is the key to success, even against the most dangerous encounters. Now we are going to move on to the Apprentice Warrens. Some general information that you should know about Warrens dungeon. In Warrens, chances to get disease is incredibly high. You can get it from monsters, interactable objects, and there is a chance to get random diseases even when you already finished your mission and plan to return back to town. It's annoying, I know, but nothing can stop a dedicated player, right? I am going to say this up front, but Warrens, in my opinion, is one of the hardest and most absurd dungeons that the original campaign of this game can throw at you. Except for the Darkest Dungeon itself. Foes have some interesting and not so funny to deal with mechanics, but with the right strategy in mind and a proper setup, you can pass even that sort of a challenge. So do not be discouraged. Yes, sometimes you will get various troublesome diseases, and yes, sometimes those situations can happen even at the beginning of your quest, but you still can do it, I believe in you. From general information, let us dive into specific stuff, such as who should you prioritize over the others. We will start this chart with Swinewretch. That piggy had made me angry so many times due to his one and only ability that doesn't do much damage, but it has a high chance of applying random disease onto the target that gets hit by it. Those diseases can range from harmless to must be removed immediately. If you have not guessed already, he should be, if not your number one target priority, then number 2 target in this dungeon. Usually, Swinewretch is placed on the 3rd and 4th spot, so you have to have some kind of abilities that can hit back row targets. Peaks are most vulnerable to raw damage, bleed, and some skills that will do bonus damage against human and beast type of foes. One amazing character that you might want to use here is Houndmaster, since he can cover both of those things at once. On the second position comes Swine Chopper, and I was thinking about who to place on this spot, choosing between Swine Chopper and Swine Drummer, but decided to go with Chopper primarily because he is a beefy target that acts as a tank. Additionally, he will also hit your heroes with either stacking bleed skill or with stun plus move attack that can mess up your positioning. This foe does not have a high protection percentage, but he has decent pool of HP, and that makes so that you won't be able to kill him by just one shot, unless you perform a strong critical hit, but we do not count that factor, especially on Apprentice Dungeon expeditions. Keeping all of those factors in mind, you should try to kill Swine Chopper as soon as you'll finish with troublesome backliners. When you try to get rid of him, try bursting him down with your most powerful skills. Weaknesses stays the same: bleed, raw damage, damage versus human, and beast type. Swine Drummer comes in the last position in our chart. Pretty much all of the dungeons in this game will have something that can stress you out, and Warrens are no exception. Drummer is the type of enemy that does apply stress to your heroes, but he can also debuff you with minus dodge chance and mark your debuffed characters. Stress should not be neglected, because stress heal is way too expensive and time-consuming. Dodge debuff is manageable, because at the early game your base dodge chance is so low that getting affected by -5 dodge means absolutely nothing. But when it comes to marking, it's a bit tricky. And this is exactly why I was thinking who to place at the second position of this list. In Apprentice Warrens, only one foe can benefit from mark, and that is Carrion Eater. Worm-like creature that has one single target attack that has a chance to blight you, and the skill damage is increased if it hits the marked target. Thus, my advice will be: first, if the encounter has Drummer and Carrion Eater, try focusing one of those foes in order to avoid consequences. Second, if Carrion Eater is absent, Drummer should not pose you that much threat. But keep in mind that in either of those situations, should you see Swine Wretch, you'll focus him straight away. Weakness-wise, bleed, raw damage, and damage versus human and beast types are your best friends. For conclusion to today's episode of Darkest Dungeon, Apprentice, Wilderness, and Warrens Tips and Tricks, I would like to say the following. By using some of those helpful tips that I gave you, you'll be able to understand what is target priority, what are the benefits of using enemies' weaknesses, what are some of the most dangerous skills that you should be keeping in mind when starting a new fight. There are a lot more information that I would like to share with those who had just started playing Darkest Dungeon, especially considering the fact that this game has so many important aspects that do influence one way or another the flow of the game as well as the outcome of some situations. However, it is best for me and for you to study the game one step at a time. Do not neglect importance of planning every single step that you make, no matter how much time it will take you to do so. Carefully balance between what you should do in different situations and what are you trying to achieve. There is absolutely no need for you to rush. Slow and steady wins the race, remember that. I hope that you liked this video and you will be able to utilize the given information in your own walkthrough series. Once again, I'm going to state that this information was based upon my own subjective opinion, and you are free to either agree or disagree with it. The choice is all yours. In the next video, I will be diving deeper into the apprentice level dungeons. primarily by addressing mandatory boss fights that you will have to go through in order to progress the story to unlock veteran-level dungeons. Stay tuned for more beginner-friendly content that will appear in the future. And while you are waiting for it, you can try to build up some of your own party compositions that will be beneficial for you in those apprentice dungeons that we have talked about. Keep in mind such factors like healers, stress healers, strengths and weaknesses of your foes, positioning, target priority, as well as synergy between your heroes. With all that being said, I would like to say that this is going to be it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Post your feedback, share your thoughts and impressions. Follow us on our social media to keep in touch with the latest information. Additionally, if you would like to support us, you can always do so by clicking on donation links that I've placed in the description. All of those donations will go straight up towards improving visual, sound, and overall improvements of streams and edited videos that we will be making in the future. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you all next time.